The latest. Thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. They keep repeating the same word. They don't understand that we are no longer looking for new masters. On television, on radio, in editorial and report written thousands of kilometers away. They don't understand that the African wants to be the master. Suffering. The suffering of Burkina Faso. The suffering of Mali. The suffering of Niger. The suffering of African people. This is what always they talk about. Instead of paying attention to the suffering of their own people, they say it slowly. They say it seriously. They say it as if they are mourning us in Africa, as if the Africans do not have any hope except them. But listen carefully. This word is not being used to help Africa. It is being used to prepare you. Because when a story is repeated enough time, it stops sounding like propaganda and starts sounding like truth. That's why we are finding it so difficult to understand that everything these people are doing is propaganda. So let's pause for a moment and ask the question nobody asks. Why now? Why do they care so much about Africa? Why this sudden obsession with African suffering? Why this emotional campaign right now at this precise moment in history? Because they are making it look as if they care for us so much. When you listen to this man speak, this Frenchman, you understand. This is not compassion. This is not expectation. Because behind the humanitarian language, behind the sad music and dramatic headlines, there is a quiet hope, a dangerous hope they are waiting for. They are waiting for something to break. They are waiting for the government of Burkina Faso and Mali, Niger to fall. Waiting for exhaustion. Waiting for economic pressure. Waiting for chaos. This is all that they are hoping for us in Africa. They never have us at heart, no matter how they try to present it.
Of the Malian people. Why is he talking to us about the sufferings of the Burkinabe people? Because they hope that the regime in Burkina and Mali will fall and that a new regime will return, will be established, which will call them back, which will allow them to come back and take those possessions. And we must denounce the maneuvers of our own imperialism. What Lucas said is very true. Chinese imperialism has nothing progressive to offer to the workers of Africa. But we must leave no doubt about one thing, which is that our main enemy is our own bourgeoisie. We must not leave any doubt that we would have any illusion whatsoever about the progressive, humanistic, or democratic nature, or whatever, of French imperialism. French imperialism has been the executioner of Africa for nearly 2 centuries, and it is an excellent thing that the workers and masses of Africa have kicked out the French army one after the other. And we must emphasize that it is an excellent thing. We are not going to stop there. Today, it is on the ropes, but it is not defeated. It's a wounded fierce beast. And we know that when a fierce beast is wounded, it becomes even more ferocious. It is losing markets everywhere, but it fights even harder to keep what it has left. That's what explains the strengthening of the military apparatus we talked about this morning. I believe it was Maxime who spoke about the strengthening of the military apparatus of French imperialism. All these giant military budgets, these expenditures for armament, etc. It is to defend France's imperialist positions in Africa and elsewhere, particularly in Africa. French imperialism is clinging on. It supports destabilization efforts in the Sahel. French imperialism is particularly pleased with the rise of jihadist guerrillas in the Sahel. These former enemies of Al-Qaeda in the Sahel, jihadism and all that, who were enemies of French imperialism when French imperialism was present in Mali. Now that French imperialism has been replaced by the Chinese and the Russians, French imperialism rejoices in Mali's defeats and the victories of the jihadists. It's easy to wonder if they are not directly supporting them. He supports destabilization efforts in the Sahel. I was talking earlier about what happened in the Central African Republic. He supports dictatorships. A blatant example of this is Cameroon. I was talking earlier about Ahidjo, who ruled from 1962. He did not reign. He's not a king. He is a president who stayed in power for 22 years. So who ruled from 60 to 82? He was replaced by another president, Paul Biya, 92 years old, who is still in power today. He was re-elected not long ago, who has been in power, as I was saying, since 1982. He was in power before I was born. And who is currently leading a deadly civil war against the Anglophone minority in Cameroon, with massacres that have been described as genocidal massacres by some human rights NGOs. And all this with the support of French imperialism. At each rigged election, which re-elects Paul Biya, the Quai d'Orsay and Macron send a congratulatory note and release a new line of credit to finance the Cameroonian army, which will massacre civilians in the Anglophone regions.
Why? So that when everything collapses, a new regime can be installed, a regime that feels familiar. You understand their language? A regime that knows who to call, a regime that will bow, a regime that will say, come back, we need you again. They are not knowing peace. Ever since we kicked them out in Mali, Niger, and Burkina, they have never been peace in their heart. And when that happens, the same hands will return to take the same possessions, only this time under a new excuse. This is how imperialism works in the modern age, not with tongues first, but with narratives. And this is where the story becomes uncomfortable, especially for those who prefer safe, neutral language. The danger is we believe these people so much. We understand them when they speak instead of understanding ourselves. If we are truly serious about African liberation, then we must learn to denounce our own imperialism. Not just the imperialism of others, not just the easy targets, but the one that pretends to speak in our own name. Yes, let's be honest, because honesty matters. That is where we have problem. The more you try to be honest with a black person, as long as you share the same skin type, you are something else to your brother. Chinese imperialism is not progressive. It offers nothing revolutionary to African workers, nothing emancipatory, nothing that fundamentally changes the balance of power. But let there be no confusion, no hesitation, no illusion. Our principal enemy is our own, the local elite, the intermediaries, the ones who benefit from dependency while pretending to represent the people. And above all, we must never ever allow anyone to suggest that French imperialism is somehow different. You see how they come portraying themselves? That this one is better than the other. China is bad. Russia is bad. You see how they do their things? That it is humanist. That it is democratic. That it is civilized. That it is benevolent. That lies has survived for far too long. French imperialism has been the executioner of Africa for nearly 2 centuries. 2 centuries of forced labor disguised as development. 2 centuries of plunder disguised as cooperation. 2 centuries of domination disguised as friendship. Borders drawn without consent. Resources extracted without dignity. Governments manipulated without shame. And all of it justified with beautiful ways. Civilization, security, stability, partnership. And we must start to understand the language the moment they start speaking. Enough of us always listening, believing, trusting other people instead of the African. We can do it. There is no amount of ways, no matter how they try to reframe, to show they love, care, respect anything of yours in Africa. A butterfly can never be paid. And we must start to love ourselves and believe more in ourselves. Let them understand, as long as we have decided to be masters of our own, we do not want masters anymore. Let them start to control themselves and let Africa be. We are the only ones that can set ourselves free. United we stand, divided we fall, and united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world. In France,